Call to order the Clive City Council meeting for March the 9th. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
council members Klein. Moving on, McCoy. Here. Judkins.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Michelinani.
Here.
We can let the record reflect that Klein
Klein's here.
is here.
With that, if you'd rise and join us in the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have approval of agenda. I know of no changes.
Approval.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next item, we have citizens presentation, and this is the opportunity for anyone to approach the council on an item that is not on the agenda. And Pete, was there anyone online? Did you see?
Nobody's online to present, Your Honor.
All right. And before we move to citizen presentation from our respected member here, go ahead and identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, I'm Patrick Snell. I'm with the Nature Conservancy and Climate External Affairs Associate.
Well, very good. Just wanted to indicate the pillars of character counts that we support here, that we endeavor at all times to follow the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And we expect everyone to follow those during our business. So proceed.
Perfect. Can everyone see? Do you have to put this PowerPoint up?
You're ready to go. Matthew will just cut you over real quick.
Perfect. Great. So I'm Patrick Snell, with the Nature Conservancy, and we were one of the main program supporters, along with 10 other municipalities, on the Grow Solar Polk County program. As a quick refresher, I just have 3 or 4 slides here, but it was an educational program where we brought together homeowners and businesses together to learn about, purchase, and install solar at reduced prices. So instead of having one resident or business go out on their own and procure a solar installation, we brought together a host of different installers, the municipalities, the utilities, to say, this is all the information you need to make an informed decision. And if we got 50 residents or 100 residents, could we get a bulk discount for that installation? So as I talked about, there was, we really appreciate Clive being a partner there, along with the 9 other municipalities, with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association and the Nature Conservancy, of course, and the 1,000 Friends of Iowa. This is a grassroots community-led program. Again, it's a no-cost program for the city, but works by putting that educational venue and opportunity for residents. Because of the good support we had, we saw a great sign up and interest in the program. We had 360 people attend the free solar power hours. That's a really great number for us. That averages about 18 people per event. Great to have that enthusiasm when you're having an educational series. From that, we had 52 property owners add solar. That's 432 kilowatts of solar energy, or $1.2 million in private investment. So really exciting from that. We had 20 plus Clive residents, homeowners come to the event. 4 of those installed systems, with our 3rd largest system here in Clive. And on top of that, another thing I always talk about is we had 10 local media news stories hits. It's great to be able to talk about the work that Clive is doing in coordination with a bunch of other municipalities in a sustainability goal, but from an economic development opportunity. You know, this is really, again, that no cost, large investment. We see $1.2 million for the life of the program. So next steps, we have decided to relaunch the program, mainly because of the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. There were a lot of churches, nonprofits, a few municipalities that are talking about utilizing Inflation Reduction Act dollars, and we're saying if we could add a technical assistance component to that. So we have decided to do that with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association and the 1,000 Friends of Iowa. And a big piece, and kind of like a teaser for it, is the traditionally, you could have a investment tax credit of 30% for a resident or a business to install solar on your home. Now, from the Inflation Reduction Act, that can be a direct pay mechanism. So a church, the Nature Conservancy, we actually are looking at all of our buildings now in Iowa, which is really exciting. Or municipality can look at that for their own cost savings at that same 30% that a business or resident could do. So we're really excited about that and are asking for Clive support along with the 10 other municipalities in joining us again on this program. Again, this is a no-cost program, but we do ask for logo use to go on our website as a list of supporting organizations. If there is a city facility that you would recommend us hosting a location, so it can be at the library next door or another fun location or business where we can get people to come out to the event. Third, if you all are interested in looking at the Inflation Reduction Act for any of your buildings or are personally involved with a nonprofit, a church, some other organization who you think would be interested, we would encourage you to connect with me in the second launch of this program and see if we can get them the information to make an informed decision. And if they want to be a part of it, join the program. So that's the big highlights of the program. We were really excited, a lot of enthusiasm, and especially with these new federal incentives, are excited to launch it for 2023. Are there any questions?
Questions for Patrick? If not, oh, go ahead, Susan.
It says the deadline to join is April 1st. So, or I'm sorry, April 21st. Is that the deadline for your partners to become part of it, like Clive, or is that the sign up deadline?
That is for the partners. Yep.
Okay.
So we'd be back in the advisory team and informally, you know, it was a great partnership with Pete in talking through this. And formally, we just asked whatever that process looks like, but joining the team again.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, Matt, so what would be the process for the city then?
If it's similar to last year, it would be just consultation with the council to make sure that we get all the head nods to lend the city's logo to this as we have in the past. And after that, I did the lifting sort of from the city side, and it was very minimal, simple things like helping create a convening space like the special events building or our space here in the library, and then including regular updates and things like the city newsletter and social media.
So is the staff supportive of renewing this relationship?
Just speaking from my own experience, it was very professional, and the experience that I'm aware of that our residents had with the program was positive.
And I would agree with that, and also add that the consideration of city facilities. I know we've talked about that around this table, and especially looking at things like when we're going to be replacing the roof at the aquatic center. Looking at this might pair well together to look at opportunities like that, pair with a bigger program, and see if the city can take advantage of some of these opportunities as well for some of our own facilities. So very supportive.
So it sounds like we could, oh, Michael?
Yeah. Quick question on your, when you get the group together, sign up for the solar, are you then putting an RFP out to secure that provider, or how are you picking the provider?
Yep. So how this program works is we send out an RFP to solar installers that has a set of parameters that they have to follow. So making sure they're an insured installer, they are reputable, credible, pieces like that. But then at the end of the day, the resident, the business, church, nonprofit now would then just sign an individual contract with the installer. So we just kind of set the parameters of saying, and we usually see about 10 to 15% reduction beneath the market rate, and that the installer then has to carry and pass on to the residents.
You're kind of vetting them for the resident, which is nice.
Yeah, what we found in the solar industry, like a lot of industries that are booming, there are really good players, there's not so good players. So this program helps to put all that information that a resident would need to make an informed decision.
This past year, I actually sat on this little subgroup that looked through all of the submissions from the providers. It turned out the one that won this past time was One Source Solar. They're also the company that happened to install my own solar when I did it through the Dallas County Solarized Dallas County program a couple of years ago.
Great. Thank you.
So go ahead, Shrikant.
Just a quick comment more than a question. We recently had a citizen committee form for sustainability kind of, endeavors. And I know 1,000 Friends is helping with that commission or committee. So it might be another resource that you guys can present to, and they can help spread that message too.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I'll reach out to 1,000 Friends and ask them about that.
Yeah, and we can get you contact information for Susan as well. Susan Pohl is the kind of heading that.
Oh, perfect. That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
I'll take care of that.
Okay, great.
So Pete, if I understand correctly, you just need head nods at this point. What are the head nods? Are they, okay, or thumbs up? Yeah, that works
Okay.
too. Eric, are you supportive?
Yes, I'm supportive. Thank you.
Very good. Well,
Thank you, Your Honor.
you've got all the head nods, thumbs up, and support we need on this. So
Great.
thank you for coming in. We appreciate it, Patrick.
Yep. And hopefully I'll be here next year saying the same thing again. So thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Close this.
Next up, we're glad to have Sally Dix here to give a Bravo presentation that Pete is pulling up. So
Hi, thank you all so much for making time for me tonight. I'm really excited to share a little bit about what's going on at Bravo, some of the things we have coming. I'm going to speak at a fairly high level, but please ask questions or jump in as we go or save them for the end. Before I get started, I certainly want to thank and acknowledge Susan Judkins, who serves as the City of Clive's representative on our board. We appreciate her service and many hours of volunteering beyond board, regular board things. We do ask a couple of additional questions, and Susan always is one of the first to step up. So we really appreciate that. So a quick refresher, most of you have been around the block a time or two, so I won't spend too much time on Bravo's history, but just a quick reminder, we were formed in 2004, and this was because business and community leaders recognized the critical role of quality of life to our region's future. They determined at that point that a regional entity dedicated to arts and culture would not only be efficient, but also effective. We were originally a collaboration of 9 local partner governments who each contributed a portion of their hotel motel tax revenue. We now have 17 local government partners that are a part of the Bravo universe. We continue to act as a steward of those hotel motel tax revenues that our cities contribute. And we believe that arts and culture are directly connected to every regional priority. So from talent development to economic growth, mental health to transportation, we are confident that arts and culture can and should play a role. The strategy, of course, that we're best known for is our grant making or community investment. We take our role as stewards of public funds very seriously, and we're proud to say that on behalf of our investing partners, we've invested more than $50 million in the last 20 years. In our most recent cycle, just to give you a sense of where the dollars are going, we invested in 85 cultural partners from 13 of our 17 communities. The 4 communities that did not have anyone funded did not apply to have anyone funded, and that is almost the only way not to get money from Bravo. So we were very pleased that 100% of the applicant communities were funded. The organizations that we're funding have annual operating budgets that range from $2,500 to $24 million. There is wide depth and breadth in the organizations that we're supporting. And it's interesting to note that 66% of the organizations we support actually have budgets below $250,000. And more than 50% of our total cultural partner organizations are all volunteer run. I know sometimes there's a perception that all of the dollars are going to the big, well-staffed, well-managed organizations with facilities, and that's just not what the data bear out. Support for nonprofit cultural organizations is central and core to our mission, is by far where we spend the most amount of time and energy, but we know there are other ways to support a robust cultural climate. And this includes direct investment back to our local government partners. And recognizing that public art was a priority in many of our communities that are supporting Bravo, in 2019, we added a public art grant program. This program is for public art master planning or for the development and installation of pieces of public art that generate more local creative connections. This grant program is actually only open to our 28E partners and communities rather. And we've invested nearly $300,000 in the 2 years we've run the program. We started it and then we had to stop because of COVID, but we're back. It's happening. So I would encourage you to look. We have just reopened the program. It's actually, the applications are open now, and would encourage the City of Clive. I've talked to Matt before. I know Pete's very well aware. We appreciate the staff's efforts to stay abreast of what's happening at Bravo, but I strongly encourage you to look at the programs. In addition to grant making, though, Bravo also provides important leadership on arts and cultural issues and opportunities. There are certain efforts that a single grant to a single organization simply can't address. And Bravo feels that our investment in projects and programs that further align arts and culture with regional priorities is an important role for us. A couple of examples of what we've done recently include Arts and Economic Prosperity 6. This is a national economic impact study. So it will be, a local study, but it's part of a national program. More than 350 communities across the country are participating in this program with Americans for the Arts. And we will get economic impact data for our community alone, which I think will be really interesting. And then it will allow us to compare across other metros, see where we're being successful and where we might have opportunities. We also have invested in a partnership with DART, recognizing that transportation transit is incredibly important to our region and bus shelters are a high demand priority. We have said if a city wants a bus shelter, that's great, but let's use it as an opportunity to elevate public art. And Bravo has invested in enhancing those shelters to add public art, knowing that there's lots of ways for people to experience art in their day. The third program that I wanted to lift up was Passport to Culture. This was formerly known as Connecting Kids and Culture. It is dollars that Bravo invests in all of the school districts across the region. Those schools can then use those dollars at their own discretion to invest in field trip experiences or outreach where a cultural partner would come in and deliver programming directly to the students. I know that Clive students are combined West Des Moines and Waukee for the 2022-2023 school year. Those two school districts combined are receiving more than $30,000. That's just for the elementary school students right now. So students from Clive are benefiting from that program as well. All of this, of course, is important because creativity is important and art is important, and we like all of those things, but we know that they have to carry a little bit more weight than just being interesting or beautiful. And it's critical for you to understand that all of the investments that we're making are having a tremendous economic impact on the region. This is from the AEP 5 study. It is, of course, a little bit dated. There were some delays in when seemed like the right time to run another economic impact study, obviously because of the pandemic, but we're going for it now, and we're really excited. But even in 2015, $185 million worth of economic impact. That is only from the organizations that Bravo is supporting in the region. That doesn't include for-profit, that doesn't include individual artists. This is only the nonprofit sector. For frame of reference, that year, Bravo invested about $3.5 million worth of public funds, and the organizations turned it into $185 million worth of economic impact. That's pretty good ROI. So moving forward and coming out of the pandemic, just as many of the organizations we're supporting are reimagining their futures in a vastly transformed landscape, we knew that Bravo also could not come back in the same way. For Bravo and for the community, there's an urgent need to continue to strengthen a resilient and connected cultural sector. Beyond economic impact and quality of life, arts and culture really must be seen as essential to achieving all regional priorities. Again, Bravo already plays a leadership role in this work, but we are firmly committed to evolving into a true regional arts council. We will, of course, maintain our primary focus on support for our nonprofit organizations, and grant making will always remain Bravo's core and principal function. But for Bravo to remain nimble and responsive and relevant to the future vitality of arts and culture in Greater Des Moines, we are intentionally focusing on a broader scope of services moving forward. We will amplify and champion the role of arts and culture in delivering broader economic, civic, and social impact. We will connect and strengthen relationships between the cultural sector and the broader community. And we will cultivate initiatives that establish arts, culture, and heritage as a priority driver of regional identity. We are actively implementing this plan, and I look forward to sharing our progress as we go. Just to conclude, if you remember just one thing about this presentation, please remember that your support for Bravo means support for every one of these priorities up on this screen. Every single thing that's important to the region is improved because of what Bravo is able to do with your dollars and your investment. So thank you again for your time tonight. Thank you again, Councilmember Judkins. We really appreciate your continued support, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Questions for Sally? And if you don't recognize that, that is a monumental journey. Do you want to take a moment to tell us a little more about that?
It's a Kerry James Marshall piece. He's an internationally acclaimed artist. It was commissioned by the Greater Des Moines Public Art Foundation. I always get it wrong. It was the National Bar Association. It's in honor of the National Bar Association, which was formed by a group of African-American attorneys who were not eligible to enter the American Bar Association because they were Black. So they started the National Bar Association right here in Iowa. And this is a monument that symbolizes their journey and the progress that's been made. So it's a treasured piece of the collection for the
Where's that
region.
located?
It's right in downtown Des Moines. If you know where the World Food Prize building is, you've driven by it a million times and never seen it. It's just far enough set back from the street, but it'll be right there, and it's a beautiful piece, worth a trip.
So
Go ahead,
Yeah, one
Ted.
quick question. Do you know are you involved at all with Icon Water Trail, public art?
Yes.
What role are you guys? Because there's going to be a lot with that. for
Yes.
sure. And we
Yeah.
talked about that early on at the board meetings there. I just couldn't remember if Bravo was involved in that.
Yes, so we are actually running the grant program. It's a joint program between Bravo and Icon. We are both investing funds in it.
Right.
And then the dollars will go out over 2 years. It is intended to be a short-term, one-time, or in this case, two-time, very similar to the DART relationship where we pooled funds to advance that and amplify the impact. So yes, the Icon Public Art Grant Program is also open right now and will run 2023 and 2024.
I'll tell you with that particular grant program, we have already identified that as a priority to submit an application for Greenbelt Landing to seek funds to kind of leverage and amplify NCMIC's 100,000 contribution for public art associated with that project. And that is something that Richard and I have discussed, and we actually are working on that grant application right now as part of that program. And I also wanted to mention too, Sally and I have had some conversations when they were doing a presentation at the Harbach Center last week. We hosted them, the Bravo group and a number of other cities, to talk about artist selection processes and RFPs and things like that. And we've talked quite a bit about the Harbach Center and opportunities that we could have there for Bravo invested organizations to come and do programming at the Harbach Center for that neighborhood, both in the park and in the center. We've also reached out to DMPA, the Des Moines Performing Arts, to started doing here over the last couple of years, kind of public performance programs in city parks throughout the metro area that they kind of bring the programming to. And that is also another avenue that we're seeking, again, all Bravo funded organizations. So I think there's going to be some really good opportunities. We have the space, and most of the time the organizations are looking for space for their programming. We have the space. And so that's something, especially this summer, as we've got kids out of school, to be able to do some fun programming. So we're already starting that process. And I understand that the board has had a recent discussion on these kinds of things. So
Yeah, we're
good timing.
always looking for ways to continue to add value to the local communities as well as the regional center and expand our services so that everyone feels good about what they're getting in and putting in and getting out of the program. And I do have to lift up staff. Both Matt and Pete have been tremendous to work with. They are the first ones to sign up. They are the first ones to show up. They are the first ones to return phone calls. That's not always the case for us. So we do really appreciate both of you as well. Thank you.
You have a report yet on the gala? And Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question, Sally. Thanks again for presenting to us. I know you mentioned investment in both Waukee and West Des Moines school districts. Could you highlight some of the grants you've made to Clive organizations for us?
I can send that to you as a follow-up. I did not bring that. I have many attachments, but I did not bring that. So I can look up, I know the Clive Historical Society is on the list. I can tell you 100% of the organizations from Clive that applied were funded this year. But if I may, I'm happy to send you that list tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anyway, the gala, do you have a report yet on that?
So unofficially, I'm not stating this for the, for the record in anywhere but Clive, but we have with a few outstanding bills, we think we're going to clear $250,000 from the gala this year. That's net revenue, which is exceptional. I don't know of another gala that's raising money at that level the way that we do it. So we're very excited. We're very proud of that. And half of that money will go to support Bravo and our operations so that more of the public dollars can go out in grants to the organizations in the community. So it offsets our administrative expenses. The other half of that money is going to go directly to that Passport to Culture program. We know there's a huge need for student arts and culture exposure and experiences. And so we want to make sure that we're putting as much as we can to that.
Very good. Thanks, Sally. Any other questions for Sally?
I have a couple of comments,
go
and
ahead.
that's just that I really want to credit Sally and her staff for their leadership role in helping to support all the cultural entities with the grant funding that was so needed during the difficult years of the pandemic. And that was a time where there were concerns about what kinds of resources would be available. But with their support, we contributed to the greatest extent possible to help keep entities viable. And since then, there remains a real focus on sustainability and providing encouragement to focus upon that. So it's ensured that the dollars are going to those entities that are expected to remain viable. So it really has been a very professional and welcome approach. And I know how much the entities have appreciated it. And so thank you for that process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? If not, thanks a lot, Sally.
Thank you.
Sally.
Next up, we have a NIPA report. Pete, you're going to set this up for us?
Yes, one sec, Your Honor. So tonight, Your Honor, I'm happy to introduce Caleb Knudsen, who is the senior planner for NIPA, Mid-Iowa Planning Alliance. He'll review to this evening a little bit about what the organization is, talk about some of the successes from the past year and some of the next steps in this very young organization. He'll also be prepared to answer some questions that have come up at this table with all of you about the relationship between MIPA and the MPO and possible scenarios moving forward. Caleb.
Thanks, Pete. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having me. As he said, my name is Caleb. So I made this slide forgetting about March Madness, so I will go through it as fast as I can, because I too would like to watch basketball tonight. So MIPA is the new economic development district that covers the 7 Des Moines metro counties. Economic development districts are federally designated. They are needed for funds from the federal level. Many times on federal applications, they'll ask, are you in an EDD? Do you have a SEDS? If you click yes, you save yourself a lot of time and you add yourself points to the grants. Without the EDD, the region missed out on funding, especially through the CARES Act. And as I said, on a lot of federal applications, they'll specifically ask, what is your EDD? When is your SEDS done? If you don't have those, you've got to upload a lot of your own city documents. So this is a little background. The MPO started this off in November. I came on board last April as the senior planner. It's been a whirlwind 10 months, 11 months. Yeah, we're in March. It's been a good time. One of the things that's required for an EDD is unanimous support from the counties. And we got all of that, which was super fantastic. Really surprising when you consider board of supervisors, they don't always get along with each other on the borders, but it worked. We also needed support from Governor Reynolds and Director Durham. So how it works, we have federal partnership. We get $70,000 from the federal government, which essentially takes care of me. And then through the contract with the federal government, we need one-to-one match, which is dues. Currently, our dues are at 15 cents right now per resident. We base it off the census. We have discussion of inflation costs raising those in a couple of years. I know my wife and I talked about inflation in our business, especially with eggs and things like that. So inflation is hitting everybody. Yeah.
Only if I don't ask why we go, I'm gonna forget some of these details. Can you go back a slide?
For sure.
You're talking the membership dues. Who are the members? How's that 15 cents getting to you?
Okay. For sure. Let me skip forward. So these are the 60 member jurisdictions. So as I like to say, we've got everyone from Altoona to Zering. The region's huge. Valeria is one of our smallest communities. They have less than 200 people. And so the dues are assessed. We send it out to Pete and staff. They look at it. You all talk about it and see how it works for you all. Does that answer your question?
But paid directly by the cities.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Doesn't show up on any
Does that
kind
flow
of.
through the MPO to you then? Okay.
Directly to us. Yeah. Yep. And the EDD money comes directly to MIPA as well.
First year payment, which was, it was for not the full 12-month period, because when we started, I believe it was about $2,500 for
Yeah.
the city of Clive
Mhm.
for our first year payment.
How
we
much
have
again?
separate allocations. So sorry.
How much again was that?
20, about, I recall about $2,500.
How do you break down that allocation? For population or?
Yeah. So like I said, Valeria, they have, so their dues are $24.45. That's because their population is so low. Whereas larger communities, it's just we base it off the 2020 census.
15 cents per capita, right?
Yep.
And so we have, and the MPO has a similar assessment kind of process too, but there's separate payments in our budget. So the MPO has an assessment that is paid directly to the MPO, and MIPA has a separate assessment payment.
Yeah. So, we're a 504 nonprofit. As it's been alluded to, the MPO started it. I am a fraction of the MPO, and that was to structure my benefits. And coming from city government and having a family and having a small business, it didn't work to start out without any benefits. So that's where we are right now. And our bylaws are up there if you're interested. It's not a incredibly long document. It's not super boring. How our board is structured, we have 21 executive board members, 3 from each county, public and private reps. Our big board is 60 members, so quorum, as you imagine, is 31, and the cities appoint. So we have Pete as Clive's rep, and different areas we have elected officials or city staff. So what we do, one of the things is community visits, making sure I get FaceTime with every community. When I was brought on, I told MIPA that if you let me roam the region and help people, that's going to work well. It's been one of my favorite things is getting to all the communities. I've made it 33 of the 60. I don't know that I'll get to 60 by April 25th this year, but I'm going to try.
Senator Grassley at
Yeah, the full
80-some years
Grassley.
old, whoops you.
For the record, yes, he does. I'm not going to compete with him. I think that's fair. We have 93% of the 7-county population covered. So one of the things is how can we help communities? Pete reached out and asked if we could help with your AXNY earmarks. Called the EPA, emailed them. The best time to get the EPA is 8:05 in the morning before the computer's on. Talk to the Region 7 rep, Glenn, about your STAG money, how that's going to work. So we're going to partner with Pete on that. So that's super exciting.
Just a reminder on that, that's the $500,000 that was included in the appropriations right at the end of 2022 for the Greenbelt Landing project.
Some other exciting wins, Colfax's Destination Iowa, Marion County zoning. And one of my favorite things is I'm a planner by trade, helping small towns with their planning, zoning, and board of adjustment.
Let me understand this right, though. MIPA put that application through for Clive to get that money with AXNY?
No, that was done by us.
Yeah.
I'm always very sensitive on those, right? When it comes to
This is the,
credit.
oh, no. It's not been my experience that MIPA has said that they played a facilitating role in earning those dollars. In fact, they only learned about this well after we had already secured it here. And that we started our conversations earlier in 2023. The big step they are helping us with is the NEPA process, which is an environmental evaluation that is quite bureaucratic. They're adding to us extra hands so that Richard's team, as they're getting all those dollars together and getting ready to take Greenbelt Landing to bid later this year and hopefully to start a construction, we've got all of our ducks in a row so that we understand what kind of bidding documents we need to put together, what kind of special considerations we must have in place because we're dealing with federal dollars. So this is laying groundwork to hopefully facilitate putting those dollars on target faster.
Yeah, and from my understanding, the day I talked to Glenn Curtis, Region 7, the email had just gone out, and they were excited that an economic development district is working with the city. Federal government likes to see that.
We've received that email since, so
Yeah.
we'll roll up and rolling with EPA Region 7.
As I said, the SEDS is a formal document that we submit to the federal government every 5 years. It's basically statistics, demographics, overview. The both boards of mine oversee it, look at it before we submit it to the federal government for review, and then they approve it. So these are a few of our wins on grants we've written, grants we've helped with, grants we've consulted on. Some are outstanding, some are wins. Any good grant writer will tell you their batting average is less than 300. Anyone who says more, that's a little iffy. Going forward, like I said, my favorite thing is coming to the communities and figuring out what their needs are. So when we sat down with Pete, it's like, all right, we can help with the NEPA process. Or when I sit down with Zering, there's a derelict building downtown they've been working with for 20 years. And so talking to Mel Pins, talking to the different people around the state and the federal government to try to figure out how we move forward. And are there any more questions?
Any questions for Caleb? Ed?
Well, I certainly do, but I'll let others. Caleb, obviously, as you know, we've got a lot of challenges at the MPO and dealing with MIPA. So, part of the challenge and certainly the objections that we're hearing at exec are the commingling of staff. So technically you're an MPO employee, correct?
So I think the numbers,
I believe, right?
yeah. So the numbers come out, I'm 20% MPO
Okay.
and then 80% MIPA.
Right, but so it's still commingled to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
And then we have another employee of MPO that's also, kind of loaned out to MIPA. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct. That's my understanding as well.
So, when you're dealing with salaries and benefits and all of that, it gets a little confusing and there's a lot of consternation there. And we have some entities that are basically planning on pulling out. It's not a secret, Polk County and City of Des Moines are both planning on pulling out. So I have a couple of questions there. One, Polk County, it's unincorporated, so probably not a significant impact to you budgetarily.
No, I think when I looked last, it was around $2,000.
Yeah, so not a huge hit. How do you feel the impact of City of Des Moines pulling out will be to the dues? Is that going to impact others? Are you going to have to raise your rates from 15 cents to something higher in order to cover that? What are your thoughts on that?
So when they came into this, they didn't anticipate Des Moines joining, so they never went with that assumption.
Okay.
So currently we're in talks to figure out, Dylan and I ran the numbers today, and if Des Moines and Polk and maybe one other community drops out with the revenue that we originally assessed with before I even started, we'd be at 95%.
Okay.
So the loss isn't that big. And our plan was, when I got on for strategic planning, to adjust for inflation in 2.5, 3 years.
Okay, so that's good. If with these entities pulling out, one of the things that I've been trying to push for at exec is to have a transition plan, right? So that MIPA can kind of stand on its own, be its own entity. You have your own board right now, and that's part of the concern at MPO is, well, what's our liability involved with MIPA because of all this commingling, right? So let's just get them to stand up on their own. You clearly have a role with things like the Story County Housing contract, things like that, that don't belong under the MPO's umbrella. We want to be able to offload those to MIPA. So the question is, with these entities pulling out, how long do you need to be able to stand on your own without MPO, covering the facilities, covering part of your salary, benefits, et cetera, and knowing that you're also adding more contracts and more workload, right? So
Yeah, so a transition period, that's something that we're sitting down and working through right now. Like, what is best case scenario? What would be crippling, and what would be, oh my gosh, we'll make this work. And so I don't think I have a direct answer to that, but that's something that we can follow back up with, and that we'll have, Dylan and I will have that at the next exec meeting too.
well, just know for this group, there's not a lot of appetite for a long transition period, right? So, and we talked about this earlier, is there a domino effect where more communities pull out after we see the first couple, fall out? And that's my concern, because I want to be able to stand you up so that you are able to be self-sustaining and autonomous. But we have to have a real clear plan in place that has a definite endpoint to it, because there's not an appetite for an extended transition period that just won't fly at exact. So just FYI.
I guess I'm having the math. You're 99% funding now. You go to 95% if the pullout. Is that correct? That's what I saw 99.
So before I came on board, the assumption was that Des Moines would not join. And so they never went with that as their best or worst case scenario. So Des Moines' population was never included. And so if we lose Polk and Des Moines, we're gaining, Boone County is joining. So Boone will.
They leave. Boone says.
No, Boone's joining regardless. Yeah. No, there's not that big of a beef. So Boone County is joining. Yeah. Boone County is joining. And so that will wash Polk. And then, like I said, the assumption before I even came on board was Des Moines wasn't going to join.
I don't think tonight's the place to hash it out, but I do have lots of concerns on it as well. When you're talking 95% funding of 2 employees, where does the rest of the money come?
Oh, contracts. So as Councilman Weaver said, we're getting housing contracts. We're doing other contracts like rewriting zoning code, housing studies, housing need.
So that money's already coming in.
Comp plans, yes, we've got contracts coming in.
And the org structure of this, I'm a bit confused on as well. You continue to talk about Dylan. I know who Dylan is,
Yeah.
So that's MPO. Who's your direct supervisor?
Dylan, he's the supervisor.
So,
Really? Okay.
so
Part of the challenge.
it's an umbrella where I report to my board, and Dylan is essentially contracted out so many hours a week to make sure that I'm not screwing around.
And theoretically, so is Todd,
No.
Oh,
right? So, yeah, again, there's a lot of this commingling, and it's causing a lot of consternation from many different aspects, from the financial side of it, from the liability side of it. There's this real desire for some separation. And to be clear, I believe MIPA has a role, right? And the MPO has been taking on things that it should not be taking on. We don't have a role in housing. Story County is not even in our jurisdiction, right? So the idea that we're gonna do Story County housing contract management makes no sense to me. So MIPA clearly plays a role in that, and we want to be able to offload those things, but we need to make sure that they can stand up on their own to do that.
is your board an advisory board only, or an MPO is the funding source of your board or your MIPA?
MPO doesn't fund us. We get our dues, like I said, we get the direct payment from the federal government, and then our membership dues come directly to me.
MPO does all the back office. The
Yeah.
administrative.
So we pay the MPO for payroll and auditing, things like that.
In addition to the employees being technically MPO employees, right? So,
Right.
But the MIPA board is distinct from
Autonomous.
the MPO board.
But that
With their own
causes some
funding.
consternation because the MIPA board is making all the decisions, but the MPO has the employees, right?
Which
So
could be the greater share of the dollars, right? When it comes to benefits and employee salaries in a startup. Could be the bulk of the dollars coming from that piece rather than just the pure 15 cents per population. So, I mean, I don't know what the salaries are, but if you put Todd and Dylan and yourself and another employee in there, that's an utter confusion, but okay. Sounds like it's being worked out though.
Yes, we are working on transition plan.
Caleb, with your board, who from the city of Clive sits on that board? I know it's separate from MPO and Ted sits on MPO. Who from the city of Clive represents us on your board?
Pete.
Okay,
and I've been in communication with Pete on some of these things, so that he's
Great. You knew that there was parallel track on a lot of this discussion, so I've been communicating quite a bit with Matt and Councilman Weaver. Thank you.
Mayor, so that makes me even more confused. So how many board members do you have?
So for the exec, I have 21,
Okay.
3 from each county. And then for the big board is what I call it, 1 from each jurisdiction. We didn't want to do a weighted vote. We wanted Alaman to have the same say as Waukee, regardless of population.
a massive board.
Okay, that's a lot. So everybody on the screen has a board member.
Yes.
Well, you're utterly not going to get anything done. But
That's why they have the
Yeah.
smaller board,
sure, okay,
get things done.
I'm finished. Thank you.
Are you sure?
Yes, sir.
Does anyone else have any comments, questions, or do we let Caleb go?
Basketball.
Well, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate hearing from you.
Thanks, Caleb.
All right, the next item would be the consent items, requires a resolution.
approval.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the consent. Further discussion, seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? And our consent items are
Mine's not showing up, but I'm a yes.
Not very technically savvy.
That is approved by a vote of 5-0. Next item, we have a public hearing dealing with Shadow Creek Peak rezoning. Did we publish the appropriate public notice? Matthew,
We published a public hearing notice in the Des Moines Register on February 22nd, 2023.
very good. Our public hearing is open. Do you have any insightful information for us, Doug?
Hopefully this is one of the shorter public hearings that you will need. In this particular case, the development applicant for the rezoning request has withdrawn their rezoning application. And we'll go back to the drawing board in hopes of having a new plan to review and work through the process in the coming months.
I would entertain a motion to close.
Close
public hearing.
public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Further discussion, seeing none. would-
Question. Oh, sorry.
I was on a roll there,
I got
McCoy.
you. You're done. I voted.
Would
I vote.
would the council please vote? And will clerk please post the vote? And our public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0, and that's the only action we need to take this evening. Thank you. Next, moving on, we've got ordinance number 1128. Matthew, that's yours.
I will keep this quick so Ted can get to his bowling match or
all about
tennis
me.
or whatever it
It's all
was.
about me.
We understand that.
Pickleball.
Yeah, that's
It's a
right.
pickleball.
I'm good
I'll
with
get
that.
right to the point. This is pretty easy. Here at City Hall, we have our utility billing department and we have our front desk, the administrative services department. We have cash drawers at those two desks. One of them has $50 in it. The other one has 100. Those amounts are set by ordinance. So we're asking for an amendment to the ordinance to bump both of those cash drawers up to $200 so that we can make change.
Very good. Questions for Matthew? If not, entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
I move that the rule requiring that an ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to this meeting be suspended with respect to ordinance number 1128.
Second.
Motion second to suspend the rules. Further discussion, Ted?
So should we have this in an ordinance? Can we not do it like others and just put it in a schedule or something so that we don't have to go through this all the time?
It's part of our cash control procedures and it has to do with what cash is floating around out in the city.
Oh, okay.
So that's why the levels are in the treasury section of our code.
Hmm.
So yes, we've had to do this before, but it is actually, since it is in our code.
Okay.
It
Just
is
curious.
something that for transparency purposes is important to have in there.
Fair enough.
Further questions? If not, would the council please vote on suspending the rules? The auditor likes that. And will clerk please post that vote, and our rules are suspended by a vote of 5-0.
Move that ordinance number 1128 be considered placed upon its passage and adopted.
Second.
Motion a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0. Ordinance number 1128 is declared to have been enacted. All right, next we have a public hearing to set for our fiscal year budget. Liz.
Good evening. Again, this is the next step in our budget process. The proposed budget reflects what we have presented in the budget work sessions so far. We'll be maintaining the same property tax rate. The budget also includes the Senate File 181 changes. And it also includes the proposed utility rates that have been discussed. So staff is recommending setting the public hearing for April 13th and to publish the required notices.
I'd entertain a motion.
Move the resolution setting public hearing for April 13, 2023 at 6 p.m. for the fiscal year 23-24 budget.
Second.
And we have a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that public hearing is set with a vote of 5-0.
Move to approve pay request number 9 RDG for Circusina Park.
We have a motion and a second to approve the pay request. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 4 in favor and 1 abstention. I think. Yes. All right, we'll move on to reports. Pete.
Thank you, Your Honor. Last week, we had a very productive meeting with the City of Urbandale and staff from Congressman Nunn's office to start talking about the community-directed funding opportunity. Our focus is on the stormwater and on the pedestrian bicycle infrastructure related to the Hickman interchange. It was received well, and we have completed our application materials and submitted them to Congressman Nunn's staff so that they can respond to them, help us tune them up. They're waiting for some direction from House of Representatives leadership on what the whole process still needs to look like, but we're ahead of the game and getting ready to have what I think will be even better conversations directly with the congressman when we go to DC. We're also looking for an opportunity for some earned media with the congressman when he's back in district to talk about this really important corridor for economic development reasons, for stormwater reasons, and for amenity reasons. Little Walnut Creek tree cutting has been completed now east of 156th Street. So think of that meaning like the wave is coming into Clive now. We continue to be very proactive, reaching out to all of those immediately bordering properties on the north side of the creeks. These are folks who are going to feel some of the effects the most. But I want to credit our water resources engineer, Ray. I want to credit the public works team, and I want to credit Richard and his team who went out and did a walk through that corridor with the contractor and the subcontractor who taking trees down to identify places where, even though it's in the construction easement area, they understand that they don't necessarily need to take everything right on the edge. That's going to end up making a big difference long-term with what is going to be a big change for the neighborhood. But we started off early setting the cultural tone that we needed to. We'll carry that through the rest of the project. I expect, though, that you all will start to hear from more and more constituents here in the next 2 weeks about those trees. And as you get those calls, please, you can direct them to me for follow-up, and I'll keep you in the loop as well as we address that. I know Councilman McCoy, one got relayed to me this week, and that constituent who lives right on the border between Urbandale and Clive, she is already on our distribution list and has received at least one update from me, but I'm going to reach out by phone as well.
Thank you. Anything else, Pete?
No, Your Honor.
Srikant.
Real quick on DART, at the monthly meeting back on Tuesday, and we had a legislative update. It looks like the Senate Bill 1125 is going to make it through in some form. There were some amendments to it. We didn't get into specifics, but it was mostly to address the concerns that DART had raised in the city of Des Moines. There was a discussion about that yesterday. Haven't received an update on what the outcome of that is, but basically the consensus Tuesday was that it will pass through the Senate. It's a little less clear about what the House looks like, if it's going to be amended further there. But the expectation is it will pass in some form at some point during this legislative session. I did ask about whether there's any sort of possibility for expanding that beyond the city of Des Moines. And basically the response was not right now, right? There's no interest in expanding that to the suburbs or any other community other than Des Moines. One of the things that they mentioned is, if that's something that is of interest, then our communities need to the councils need to raise their hand and say, yeah, we're interested and this is what we'd like to see. And so it's basically it's not going to happen this legislative session, but it's possible for future legislative sessions if there's enough support or, enough, coordinated effort, I would say.
But right now it's got the 200,000 population.
Yeah, it's limited to, cities with a population of 200,000 or greater. So yeah, basically Des Moines without naming Des Moines.
Just to follow up with that too, is following the last council meeting, I did share with the city of Des Moines that this council was willing to be in there. And I know there was maybe a couple others, but it sounds like probably not enough to warrant the amendment to the bill. But
right now there's just not enough general support to do that.
It was really put onto the dartboard very late into the game, right? I'd be surprised if too many of those towns got back to their councils, with some of them only meeting once a month, or twice a month in your odd days. This whole plan came very late.
One of the things I was going to mention with the facility, there was some discussion about the loss of the potential. I forgot the funding source here. The FTA grant that
Federal.
Yeah. What was the amount? It was
build grant, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what it was. Yep.
Build grant.
So there's concern about losing that if we don't start by I think it's May, June. And September is like the last date that we have to have something in place. There was a good update on that. And DART has worked with the FTA to create a grant workaround basically there was a hiccup that was caused by the requirement for an environmental study on the site. And so that was the basis for DART to go back to FTA and say, that process is going to take X number of months, and that'll push us over that September date. And so now FTA is working with them to create a workaround that basically it will secure that funding. It won't, I specifically asked, does it just kind of kick the can down the road and then we have a new deadline, or does it actually secure it? And the response is it will secure it. It'll just be some additional, but it'll be additional paperwork to get that.
That September date was DIRT had to be owned by DART. Their first one fell through, and that I know of, there's not another one.
Yeah, no, the site that they're looking at right now is, as far as I'm aware too, it's the only one. So. But yeah, that was the two main items I wanted to share from that.
Okay, thanks. Ted.
MPO exec met yesterday. We're going through our budget process, which with my role as the secretary treasurer, I'm pretty involved with. And a lot of what we talked about tonight, I won't rehash, but a lot of the objections and concerns about the commingling of employees and salaries and benefits and all that kind of stuff. So we're working through that. I don't think it's going to be resolved anytime soon. My earnest hope is that we can put together a transition plan to solidify MIPA, because if we don't have that, I don't think there's going to be the support for it. And I think there will be a domino that will happen at some point. So I'll obviously keep you up to date on that. And then today at Chamber Luncheon, attended the State of the City where our mayor did a great job in presenting that. I think everyone should have the presentation. And I thought that went really well. So that's it.
Thank you, Ted. Eric.
Last week ribbon cutting for Art and Wag, and it's always nice to see a new business in Clive. Sorry I couldn't attend the Chamber Luncheon. I heard you had outstanding reviews.
It was a good turnout too.
Good.
A lot of
Like to see
people
that.
there.
Very good. All right. Well, yes, we had the chamber annual dinner last week. Bob Forte got the Citizen of the Year for the Lions. So
Well deserved.
appreciated Susan being able to be there and show the support for all the award winners. And it was, I thought, a really good event. And we mentioned the chamber meeting today. Wanted to thank staff for being there. They were peppered with questions.
John did a really good job of deflecting down to the staff.
staff.
Yeah,
So, you know,
delegating.
Pete, Richard, Matt, they took a good share of questions, which there were some good questions. So I appreciate that. And we've been approached, I think many of you got this email about the resurrection of Clive Living post-pandemic. So actually they had representatives at the meeting today. So they're optimistic that it'll be back on the road and pushed out to publication within the next couple of months. So good luck for that. Susan.
You heard when Sally was here that a meeting on public art was hosted at the Harbach Center, and several communities attended and contributed, but Richard's administrative staff did the presentation on behalf of Clive. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. Tiffany.
Yep.
She did such a great job. She said afterwards she was nervous, but please
You did a great job.
take that back to her. And then on Tuesday, we had our Economic Vitality Committee meeting, had more in-depth discussion about the eastern neighborhoods. We tried this one by Zoom, and I think that worked out well. We still just had 8 of the kind of city people, not the non-Clive.
Non-staff.
Yeah, not staff or council in attendance. So it's kind of disappointing still, but we're getting there. And next month we may meet at the Public Safety Building. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I got my wires crossed on that. I thought we were gonna do the next one virtual and then do the public safety building. So we can try to see if we can do that.
Okay. Anyway, there was a suggestion that people would like to try it in a hybrid way. And so we
gonna
need
ask
to
that.
identify the right place to do that. And then there'll be a bus tour of the city in May.
Mhm.
That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Michael.
I do not have anything.
Cool.
Just a couple quick things, just legislative again. I know we've talked about a few things tonight. There's still is a number of things that are moving along. Still unsure where property tax reform is going to play out and all of that. I know that there is still ongoing discussions amongst the cities. They've formed a new group related to that as well. So staying apprised of the changes. There's also a number of other bills that are moving along that we're staying apprised of, whether it's related to pension systems or development, building codes, short-term rentals, even election law. So try to keep the council apprised of that. And then of course, stormwater, one that Pete's talked about a number of times in the past. So, you know, a lot of bills out there that are moving along. They did a lot of chamber work in terms of Senate and House approving bills this week on a number of items, including the governor's kind of state reorganization bill. So keeping our eyes on that. Also for your next council meeting, I'll be presenting a series of recommendations and proposals related to the city's recruitment retention efforts and pay and compensation market studies. We'll be reviewing that with the Employee Benefits Committee and the Council Personnel Committee over the next couple of days here, tomorrow and Monday. And that'll be coming to you all for, again, just discussion presentation by me at our March 23rd meeting. And then from there, depending on feedback and direction, then there'll be a series of action steps from there in the coming months. Lastly, I should be getting a final update here over the weekend and hoping to share it with the Personnel Committee on Monday morning if we get it in time, of the final candidate profiles for the fire chief recruitment. So we're getting that list whittled down to a finalist interview number that will have interviews at the end of March here for that. So that's coming along on schedule as well. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless
Very
there's
good.
any questions.
Thank you. Matthew, do we have any correspondence? Anything else for the good of the order this evening? Seeing none, we'll adjourn at 7:05.